Sir?
I don't know. Johnny, is that working? That doesn't look like we're recording.
Johnny, will you help Josh, please?
Now it looks like we're recording. We're recording.
Did you press record?
I pressed record. We're recording right now.
Okay, fantastic.
That's how, by the way, a very professional beginning.
By the way, that's how every single podcast we've done, and we've done over 80 now.
Yeah.
And that's how all of them have started. With
It starts
two
with
old
me
guys
not being sure if it's actually on.
don't know how to work
I watched
anything.
one on YouTube last night.
You what?
I watched one of y'all's on
Oh, one of
YouTube.
ours? So you know how dumb
well,
we
I
are.
wanted to check it out. I'm like, what am I?
She's like, yo, these guys are
Oh, boy.
super
What are we
dumb. No, we're not that dumb.
Pretty dumb.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you something. Besides...
By the way, you should introduce who we're talking
Oh,
to.
we're talking to Charlotte Flair, everybody. Like, come on. We're trying-
WWE, former, still should be the current, but former WWE Women's Champion, the last Divas Champion, correct? The last Divas Champion ever, and has stepped into tremendous shoes and is doing a phenomenal job walking within them. The great Charlotte Flair.
That intro was way better than mine. I'm going to move your mic up just a little bit so people can hear. When you watched it on YouTube,
Yeah.
did you think this is the stupidest show?
1 to 10, how stupid.
Yeah.
Oh,
And how
God.
much dumber was Freddie than I am?
I'm going to be honest. So,
Okay.
no, it wasn't that. I was like, he's from She's All That. And like my inner 15-year-old self was like, I made my dad buy me a yellow Land Rover because he had the
Yo.
D90.
No.
So I drove a yellow Land Rover in
No.
high school.
Wait, did you play beach volleyball too?
I played volleyball in college, but not
Oh, that's
beach.
right, you did play.
You
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
I did.
Where did you go to college?
App State. At Blatching State.
You played volleyball, and so you're like a true athlete because I dated a volleyball player in college, and their practices were no joke. Like I would watch their practice, I'm like, oh, I don't think I could do all that.
Yo, her training videos are way harder than any volleyball practice on earth. Like, I'm not even playing.
Well, we were just talking about if we could do 100 push-ups. Now I think she could do more push-ups than I could, and I don't think
Probably,
Yes. Yeah.
but I still think you could do 100 push-ups.
not in a row.
Do you think you could do 100 push-ups? You could be
Probably
honest.
for the camera. Probably for the camera.
All right,
What if they were CGI push-ups?
I could definitely do that.
CGI.
You know why? What we would do is when I started to struggle, we would CGI like a cartoon on my back, like Porky Pig on my back, and that's why I can't do it because he's so
We'll
heavy.
just cut to her and she'll just be crushing it, and we'll make it work.
So how stupid 1 to 10 was the video that you watched? How much dumber?
If she
No,
thinks
it-
She's All That was
it was
cool,
just
then it's a
banter.
1. Then
It
it's
was
a
just
1 on
banter.
stupid because she thought it was cool. Charlotte, what's the greatest horror movie ever? What's your favorite horror movie?
Oh,
Go ahead, tell him.
I know what you did.
Boom!
I really feel like
Probably
we
the greatest horror movie
I think
ever.
he's done his research
It's-
or has watched my Q&As.
By the way, it's starting to make a lot of sense why Freddie was like, we got to get her on the podcast. We got to get her on the podcast. I was like, why you want to? We got to get her on the podcast. All right,
Which
man.
writer would you say has missed most since leaving? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I wasn't there.
No, you were not there.
Which Freddie is your favorite Freddie?
Would you say 1997?
I'm so hot right now.
I know. I'm sorry. It's sweltering. in here. We're trying to have air on you. All right, so let's get serious. So
I think we're gonna, by the way, approach this from 2 completely different angles.
I could not
'Cause
agree
I think
more.
Freddie and I are really curious about 2 completely different parts of your life.
So there's something that's amazing to me. When I worked at WWE, the women were not looked at or treated in any way, shape, or form how they're treated now. And there's still a long ways to go. But an average woman's match was just under 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
that was with entrances. So they had about 3 minutes to tell a story. And it was virtually impossible and happened maybe 2 or 3 times a year because they weren't given enough time. I was handed the women's roster as like a project, and we brought up the Bella Twins.
Okay.
And when I left, the Bellas co-created their show on E, and all of a sudden, women's matches were drawing live ratings as high as the men's. And they were, and I've told people this on the podcast before, like they have access to live ratings, like how people are watching, what they're tuning into. Don't cut to commercial. Monday Night Football did. Let's stay on the air. And that's how they keep viewers. When those ratings began to go up, I saw women's matches move later in the show, closer to prime time, and then I saw you, and I'll get to NXT in a moment, but then I saw you in a match, and it had a commercial break. And I had never seen that in the history of WWE. A women's match had a commercial break, and it was at that moment that and I've told Josh this before, that I wanted to go back to wrestling and start working there again and writing storylines, because what you guys have accomplished, and I give the Bellas tons of credit for setting that foundation. But if this generation of women, you and a handful of others, weren't prepared for the opportunity given, then it's an epic failure instead of the tremendous success that it is today. And I just want to know from your mouth and from your brains what it's like to have seen what women's wrestling was and to genuinely experience, not as a fan like me, but to be in the ring and tell a legitimate story in 20, 25, sometimes 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If that's something that you can rap about.
Well, it's hard for me to understand, saying, oh, you only have 5 minutes. Like, to me, I'm like, my entrance takes 5 minutes.
For
I
real.
mean,
I'm with you though.
But
I'm gonna switch it.
going back to the Bellas and then the show, what it really showed our writers is that the women just needed characters. So having Total Divas and then now Total Bellas, both shows, you are seeing actual characters. Like, yeah, maybe they are playing their real life, but
it's
people
still a
are
character,
connecting
yeah.
with them and their personalities. And that's what was, I think, missed for so long. It wasn't the talent. It was that you just can't group 10 women together just because they're beautiful with their eye candy. You don't feel that.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of, okay, they were starting, to get more time and ratings is because they would watch the show and they're like, oh, that's Nikki, that's that twin, that's Brie, that's twin. So they felt a connection.
And there was a direct connection there. Those eyeballs were coming from E to the USA Network.
And a totally different demographic.
Yeah.
So I think that caught on for them, but I think this is just my opinion. But then you had NXT, and then you had these women who were, Sasha and I main evented NXT.
Yeah.
We were getting 20 minutes. I won the title with Natty. It was the longest match to record for women in the company. It was like 24 minutes.
Yeah.
It was my third match on NXT.
That's insane.
So
Josh, that is insane time.
Yeah.
I'm telling. Well, not
That's
now.
crazy.
Now it's normal.
Yeah, but we're having 4-ways and we're doing these crazy moves, and NXT, you hear about it, and then the NXT fans would be chanting in arenas at live events. So I think, to me,
This is
what
true.
it did was told
people
these
started
women,
screaming NXT
T.
at Raw events because they
Yeah.
were so proud of the product that they were seeing. I'm sorry for
No.
interrupting.
It's so that small little cult following when NXT, now I look at NXT and I'm like, you guys have no idea. I was part of the very first show that traveled outside of Florida,
It was
and here
just
we are.
Florida
It was just
Championship
Florida.
Wrestling. It was FCW
Yeah,
back
FCW.
then.
That's
Yeah.
where I started. Then there was NXT. But I think the women then were like, well, how come Triple H gives them 20 minutes, or how come they get to main event, or how come they're getting all this acknowledgement when we're here, busting our butts day in, day out, and not getting that time. So I think it just created this competition, which
love
made
that.
the girls on the main roster, not that they didn't always bring their A game, but it's okay, we got to step it up. We got to do
There's
this.
an old
we got to do
saying,
that.
iron strengthens iron. And
Totally.
when somebody sees, especially the next generation, with
Yep.
actors, right?
Yeah.
Like whoever Freddie 2.0 was. I joke with a buddy of mine named Sam, who Sam. He's like the younger, better looking, buffer version of me, and funnier, and does everything. His name's Sam Whitworth.
Yeah.
And the same person discovered us. And if I had still been trying to grind it out and met this kid and been like, oh, hey, I really like you and I'm trying to do what you do, I'd have been like, yo, somebody give me a script. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I would have to start, I would
Yes.
tighten my game up.
Yeah.
Because when you
Yes.
get comfortable, I think it was Marvin Hagler, the great boxer from the 70s, he said it's hard to wake up and run at 4 a.m. after you start sleeping in silk pajamas. Once you make it to the top,
Yep.
it's harder to stay there.
Yeah.
So when they see you guys coming and they saw the moves and techniques
Yeah.
and the level at which you guys were executing, it made the whole roster better.
And that's what That's what I
would
think.
agree with that. And there's other things too,
No,
but I
there's
think that's
other
a big
things,
part
but
of
I
it.
do think like we were getting all of this acknowledgement from the company, and they were like, well, what about us? We're not given that time. We're not given, a female coach, like when they hired Sarah Del Rey, or when Hunter did to, train the women. Like we went from having, when I first started, we had practice from 8 to 12 with the guys, and we were only in the ring for like 3 minutes a day. 3 minutes.
Wow.
To practice. And then a month and a half later, they brought in Sarah, and here we had our own class for 3-4 hours. I mean, that's a big difference.
3-4 minutes.
Yeah, and then Hunter was highlighting us on NXT, and then the girls up top were like, well, we're not given that time.
Yeah.
And then I think AJ publicly making that Twitter statement, AJ Lee, saying, well, how do you pay us? Or what did she say?
I don't remember.
Or she said something, and then the hashtag Give Divas a Chance trended for like 3 days. And Vince McMahon tweeted back, we hear you. So it was just a perfect storm with, the Bellas and the reality show, and then you had this character, AJ, who wasn't your typical sex pot,
Not
who
at
wore
all.
Converses and jean shorts. And
was a
people
dork,
were
like, video
paying to see
game
her.
nerd.
Yes,
And embraced that,
totally,
yeah.
and embraced it.
So
and
you're saying
then-
it's cool if I start wearing my jean shorts? Have you seen my legs? Have you seen my legs?
I've seen your wrestling techniques, and that's the part that you would struggle with getting over. The jean shorts, you'd be good. You would commit. As long as you
Have you
commit,
seen-
you get
I'm
any
from
girl.
North
legs
Carolina,
are-
so I might see jean shorts
You see
more
them
than
more.
you
Have you
do.
seen how pale my legs are?
Oh my God!
I
I can actually see your blood vessels.
Look at this. They're almost light blue. Look at that. And look how skinny my ankles.
Those are cool shoes.
I
though.
don't. Thank you. I don't know if I could handle the jean shorts.
That's wider than Sheamus.
Yes. Yeah. That's pretty white.
My favorite joke I ever wrote was this Irish guy that works for the company. He's
Yeah.
a huge guy named Sheamus O'Shaughnessy. That's his real name. And was it not his real name?
I don't.
Well, we're gonna say it's his real name.
Okay.
And
His name's Tom Johnson.
I hope it's not. I'm saying it's Sheamus till the day
Bobby
I die.
Joyner.
He was doing a bit with this Italian wrestler named Santino Marella.
His real name?
No. But Santino is one of the nicest, funniest guys and would literally be willing to try anything. He did not care. He would commit and give you 100%, and I loved writing jokes for him. And he talked in this segment he had with Sheamus about actually being able to see his heartbeat during the matches because he was so white, and Sheamus didn't like the joke, and so Santino threw me under the bus quick, and he came back and he was like, "You're supposed to be my acting coach, and you're doing all that." And he comes at me. I was like, "Bro, I thought it was funny. I'm so sorry." Like, and he's huge, so I'm like, "Dude, no, it's all in fun." He's like, "I had to hear that, bro." So anyway, you're that white, Josh.
I am that white. I listen. I don't do well in the sun. I go from this white to like extra red. It's not a great transition. And then when I peel, it's that white again underneath. So it doesn't really do me a whole lot of good out in the sun. I have a couple questions for you that don't have anything to do with wrestling.
Okay.
Okay, so where did you grow up?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
And okay, so because your dad wrestled,
Yep.
he was gone
A lot.
a lot on the road. Okay. When you're growing up and because I have a lot of similar questions for you that I asked Freddie. When you're a legacy, right? How much pressure is there to do what he did? And because I've heard Michael Jordan's kid talk about, and you're basically Michael Jordan's kid. I've heard him talk about, and he's a decent basketball player, but he was like, it might have been the worst idea I ever had to get in because my dad is Michael Jordan. Like, how do you combat the comparisons? And there can't be the comparison isn't fair, but I'm sure it's happened. How do you personally combat that kind of stuff?
So growing up for me, it was more being like at volleyball and the opposing team wooing and just blocking that out. So growing up wanting to wrestle wasn't really an issue, or living up to this expectation of that. Who really suffered was my little brother.
How come?
Because how he saw my dad just was always the life of the party, or throwing parties, or just over the top with everything he did. That's how I think Reed thought he needed to always be.
Right.
So like there's this story about we lived like literally like a second from the clubhouse. So Reed was taking the kids from school to dinner at the clubhouse and like charging these like 20 people meals every night. So like Reed ran up, I want to say like a $30,000 or $40,000 tab at the clubhouse on
How
like
old was he? How old was he?
it was like 8th grade.
That's like in the
Like
that's
that's
like
not
in,
normal.
funny.
It's like in Fletch. Put it in the Underhill
Yeah,
bill.
like,
Exactly.
Hey, let's just go to the Piper and it's pasta night. Like taking the
Yeah,
13-year-olds
right.
to whatever. So I just
It's
think he
pasta night.
like he suffered with that. I not suffered, but that I think was what weighed on him. And then when he did get into professional wrestling or on the independents, I just don't think he could handle the comparison or the pressure. Or like my dad is the most charismatic person I know. Not
Yeah.
that Reed wasn't charismatic, but like it was Ric Flair in wrestling. Like so Reed wasn't going to come out in a row. I can't imagine and I think it got to where he had to do, this is just me, he was doing, my mom would kill me for saying this, but I think he probably did drugs to mask that feeling when he was performing.
It makes total sense.
Like that's what I think.
Because you probably have to go through a journey with it. And did you go through your own journey where you were like, my dad's Ric Flair, and then you're like, fuck, my dad's
Oh my
Ric
God,
Flair.
my senior year, I'm so glad there wasn't social
I mean,
media.
did you go
Oh,
in and out of being
No,
man.
like, I
Could you
think I was
imagine?
a brat. Like, I think I just went through this like summer with my friends. We were wild and just maybe. But I think once I think it was just like maybe a summer of that. But when I got to college, and then my dad was retiring and things started to change, and he left my mom. And when he retired, my dad just completely lost himself. So the whole idea of Ric Flair, I never really grew up watching wrestling. It never really like got to me.
So then what made it get to you? Like what's the next?
That's what I
So
want.
you
So
go
the
from I don't
next
want
step-
it to I want it.
At the Hall of Fame for the Four Horsemen in 2012, me, Reed, and my dad, the three of us went on a little trip. And my dad had just left his fourth wife.
It's funny is that you just did the counting on your hands.
No, I
You
had to
went,
make sure I was like, wait, where's Tiffany? So Tiffany's the third. So Jackie was the
My Uncle
fourth.
Paul's on first.
So I just have to get it the
They're
story
not quitter.
correct.
Hey, he's not a quitter.
He's not a quitter. So he had just separated from Jackie. I was in a bad relationship, and then Reed's just Reed. So the three of us go, and we're at dinner, and John Laurinaitis was a producer, which I'm sure you
John, yeah, I know John.
Johnny. Was like trying to tell Reed what he needed to do to get into the company. Like, I think you need to go to Japan. I think you need to do this. But in the meantime, I still to this day think Johnny only said it to me was to get, because Reed and I like were super competitive growing up with my dad's attention. So Johnny was like, why aren't you doing this? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like 26 or 27, like absolutely doing nothing with my life except personal training and in a crappy marriage. I was like, I don't know. And then for some reason, I was just like, well, maybe if I go to Tampa, my little brother will get his act together. We could live together. Then he'll be sober. And then I can get out of, I just needed to get away. And that's how wrestling started for me. So then when I started wrestling, I was like, oh my God, all these people hate me. Like, what are dirt sheets? Like, why does
What
it matter
are
that
dirt
my,
sheets? That's
like,
like
what's
tabloids.
a dirt
Oh,
sheet?
okay, yeah.
Like, what's a dirt sheet? And like, I didn't even know what my dad
Wow.
really meant to wrestling until I started wrestling because I never cared about it.
And at what point, because I can tell you for me as a performer,
Yeah.
I know the moment where I was like, no, I like this. Do you know
Oh
what
yeah,
I mean?
the first day I got
like
in the
this.
ring, I was
Yeah,
like,
was it? That was it?
it was like physical, and I'd played sports my whole life, and I was like, oh, I like this, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be good. But it took me like a year and a half to get that. Like, people don't care if you're good or not. People want to connect with you.
Yes.
So if I'm told that I can't woo and I do this and do that and I can't be anything like my dad, how are people gonna connect to me? I'm just like this generic white athlete that is scared of her own shadow. Like, how am I emotionally gonna get that person to feel me? Like, you feel Dusty Rhodes, you feel Ric Flair. And I get that quote from some this ESPN reporter that in the 30 for 30 for my dad's, like you felt my dad, and it took me a while to connect because I didn't acting and modeling and hair extensions and makeup, like it was stressful.
It is.
I was like, oh my God, there is so much to learn.
But that's
Yeah.
the same with
Oh.
any art, and what you do is an art.
Oh.
With any art, the people who are great are the people who make other people feel.
Yeah.
Who make other people, because I'm
And
sure
it
we
doesn't
can-
matter if they're
Yeah.
if they're wanting to kill you
Yeah,
or
doesn't
cheer,
matter.
as long as you. I want to add on to his question. So my father was a comic in the '70s, and he had the #1 show in the country. It was called Chico and the Man. And when I decided to follow in those footsteps, which I never wanted to, it wasn't until I was 18 years old and my family just had to make money, and that was the quickest way for me to do it. I wanted to be a fighter. I thought I could be awesome. I couldn't. Josh has seen me fight pro guys. He sees what they do.
Well,
to
it's
me.
Freddie seeing me fight my son. That wasn't great either. I sparred with my son. He must have punched me in the face
You
37
took it easy
times.
on your
I
brother.
know.
He was being nice.
I think.
Just imagine next time when I remind him all the shit you didn't buy him. Sorry. So for me, when I came out, I didn't want to do anything my father did. And I had a lot of anger and resentment in my early 20s because my father, he took a lot of drugs and killed himself. And Hollywood kind of loved him. And so when I moved out here and said I was going to do it, they wrapped their arms around me. And some of them protected me, as I'm sure some people in the company were like, hey, I want to look out and protect you. The tricky thing with that is some of those people don't have your best interests at heart. And it soured me for a good 2 or 3 years on the business before I said, all right, everyone has their own morality that's unique to them, and who am I to do this? And I started not looking at people as good and evil, but just people trying to survive. When I worked at WWE, it was the most honest, brutally honest, deceptive company that I'd ever worked for. And I love it. I would go back again. But you know who you can trust and you know who you can't. But the amount of, it's like comedy. When you tell a joke and it doesn't play, they don't laugh.
Mm-hmm.
That's honesty. When you have a match and the fans don't engage, you can't help but take that personally. That's honesty. But at the same time, when you get them, when you have a joke that just kills and the laugh lasts so long, you're like, yo, shut up, I'm trying to get to my next bit.
I've never said that.
Because you're kind. But you've had matches, I'm sure, where they were so into it, you must have been like, I don't want this match to ever end. I could wrestle 90 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
first time you felt
But-
that? What's the first time you felt that?
Oh, my match against Natty in NXT. But the whole the audience liking you and not liking you, I got lost. So NXT, I'd only been wrestling technically maybe a year and a half.
Mhm.
So then 2 years before I got on the main roster, and then when I got on the main roster, they debuted me as a good guy.
Yeah.
But I was getting booed. Like I remember walking out at TLC versus Paige.
Well, they thought you were the next chosen one, and they reject that
yes,
so
but
hard.
I could not emotionally take myself away from the job and just say, I work my butt off. Why don't you guys like me? And then when I just realized it's all about getting a reaction. So just put your ego or your feelings or whatever it is and be like, no, if they think that you've been handed everything because you're his kid and the whole nepotism and generation and Hunter loves your dad, so of course he loves you.
And by the way, no more nepotism in any field than in wrestling.
Yeah, so I had to realize use that.
Yeah.
And once I really decided just flick off the fans as you walk out, that's when everything connected to me.
So that's the perfect transition.
Yes.
So the difference between the Charlotte Flair character,
Yeah.
right, and you. I heard you say something, a girl afraid of her own shadow. The Charlotte Flair character has no shadow. You know what I'm saying? She shines too bright. So there's just sun on all sides of her. There is no shadow to be cast.
How did you find, I know as a comic how you eventually find your Who Am I. Did you walk through a couple different skins before you found the Who Am I, the Charlotte Flair that you are in the ring now?
So I think NXT was just showing people my athletic ability. I really didn't have any personality. I had a great match with Natty, Sasha, and then the 4 horsewomen, the 4 of us. that's when NXT started to travel. Like I was
you
a
had the
great
sick
little
layout
wrestler.
that was badass too off the top.
Thank you. I didn't really have a character, and then turning to the bad guy, I felt that. Like the more they hated me, the more I grew confident. And then I was like, yeah, I will woo.
Yeah,
you don't
you
like
built
that.
it out.
I will strut. You don't like that.
Josh, she took her father's robe. Tell
Yeah.
him.
So when
This
my
is
dad
amazing.
retired in 2008, he had this blue robe. Well, I took the seamstress still had the pieces from that robe.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was my dad walking me out at WrestleMania 32, she customized the exact same robe that looked just like his. So basically, I was like, yeah, I'm everything that you say I am. Like I'm entitled. I'm a brat.
But
I'm
even the
Ric Flair's
costume
butt.
reflected it. It was like
Yeah.
it's like this royal, like almost not a headdress, like a neck dress and like a peacock. And well, let me strut. If you're gonna think I'm this
Yeah.
character, then
So
I'll be that character times 10. And these were the kind of things when I
Yeah.
worked there. We would do this weird acting class when I worked there, and I would talk to them about the level of commitment necessary. And I would tell
Yeah.
them like, there's not a gimmick you can come up with that won't work if you're willing to commit all the way with it. Now I was proven wrong because this one guy pitched me an idea that was so crazy. I was like, dude, if I pitch that, you're gonna get fired, and so am I. There's just,
Oh,
you
who
said
was it?
I can't.
Okay,
I don't want
okay.
to throw him under the bus. I'll tell you the gimmick. He wanted to come out as an astronaut, and he wanted to come down from the top, like he's coming down from the moon. And so my first question is, okay, I don't want to dump on it right away. I go, why? And he goes, whoa, because I always wanted to be an astronaut.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you want me to go to Vince McMahon and say, I'll tell you.
So
who
what
it was
did he
after the
say?
podcast.
Was because like your character has to be somewhat of an extension of who you are. Like the ones that last.
He was a high flyer, and that was his
Oh.
connection.
Okay.
Look, it was not a well thought out
High
gimmick.
flyer.
His thing was he just really wanted to be an astronaut. And so now look, he's no longer with the company,
Yeah.
and he wasn't with the company much longer after that pitch. But that was the only one. And we would do these things where I would ask people to bring in their favorite scene from a movie they loved. And I would kind of show them how actors break down these scenes and give them the opportunity to sort of reenact it if they weren't comfortable with their own skin. And I can say this because he said it, but with Dolph, I did this thing where I said, bro, like, you need to come off way more arrogant. You need to be all-knowing, never looking for answers. And I made him watch Malice with Alec Baldwin. And there's this great monologue in the second act of Malice where he's a doctor who did a surgery without permission, and now he's in front of the board having asked questions, and how dare they question his medical expertise. And he says, I'm board certified and all, with that great Alec Baldwin voice in all these states. You ask me if I have a God complex? I am God. And it was this, and I made him watch. I was like, I want you to do that speech, and I want you to do it for Vince McMahon. And he did it, and we worked on it for like a month until he finally was off book. He had the whole thing. He did not do the bad Alec Baldwin impression that I did. He did his Nick version of it. Very sort of Kent State, educated,
Dolph.
proper with Dolph and all that. And he went in and he pitched it, and it completely changed the perception because the commitment to the character,
Yeah.
what you're saying, something someone can connect to. And if they couldn't come up with it, I say, go to movies, find characters you love, that you connected with them, and we can create that here. And what you've managed to do with the Charlotte Flair character in a very short amount of time, by the way, has been a new sort of foundational step in the women's wrestling
How so?
world. Okay, here's the blowing smoke up your ass part. Sorry. It's very rare that a wrestler can say again. So stupid.
Guy from She's All That.
You're so dumb. You're so dumb. She find out I'm such a wrestling nerd and I'm gonna no longer be cool.
Right now.
That guy from She's All That.
You guys are dumb. I hate you
Does
both.
he have the D90?
You guys are both stupid. You're awesome.
When you were talking, you kept going like this and looking over at Freddie. I'm like, that's what she's thinking right now. I was like, that's the guy from She's All That.
She's not gonna think I'm cool after this. I'm glad you busted it. So this is pretty much what you saw
I
when
like
you
how you
watched
just
it.
screenshot the text from my dad when I took.
I love your daddy, by the way.
I know. He told me to tell you.
He was always a sweetheart to me. Okay, so it's very rare you're such a jerk, Josh. Look at you.
Sorry. From now on, when I
My
say
cheeks
what
are
you're
hurting.
thinking,
Because it's 90 degrees in here.
No.
I hate you. Here's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare in professional wrestling for someone's work level or mic level to be at an equal level, meaning your skills on the mic being near to or as good as your in-ring work is. There's a lot of people over the years that have been amazing in the ring, but their mic skills weren't where they needed to be. Or guys or girls who were sick on the microphone, but you did not want to see them
It's
work.
interesting.
Well,
And when you have someone who can do both, and you can be humble,
well, my
and you
mic
should
skills still need work. Like, but I think becoming a baby face and having to not hide behind, like, I can be arrogant. Like, that's
Yes.
even made me better.
And it's good that you say that, because you should always be trying to get better.
Yeah.
But give yourself credit, because
No,
your mic skills are
what
legit.
I think, like, legitimately helped me was the fact that I was captivating the audience, and for the first time, the woman was not being praised for how she looked. Like, and when I first came out, that right after WrestleMania 32, I'm like, I was the center of that stadium, and no one's like, oh my God, that's Charlotte Flair, the hottest diva they were like, that's Charlotte Flair, and she arguably is one of the best wrestlers.
What I tell you.
That's what changed, like, cause I was the perfect size, the perfect, like, I looked like legitimate, or I looked like an athlete to the fans.
And at that point,
that's when it changed.
Those are some of the same qualities that they hated you for.
Yes, and that's what was funny, because I'm like, do you know how much sleep I lost by not knowing how to do my makeup, or that I looked like a man or my dad in a wig? I'd be like, I am his daughter. What do you want me to look like? Like, I was not used to that.
When people have to create hate, they do
Like,
just that. They create.
Yes,
But it's not.
But when you're not from that world,
For sure.
it's like
It's the worst
scary.
thing in the world to hear.
Yeah, I'm like, what is a dirt? Like,
What?
what?
I love this. You like
Like-
tabloids, like rags.
Yes.
Oh.
Same thing. But
so,
they're
yeah.
online, and it's just a bunch of people talking shit about. I didn't know what they were either, and I started at the company, and like all the writers were like
They're
always
so
on them, and I'm like,
terrible.
man, y'all are on this instead of writing the damn shows, like, but it was life. It was life.
When you were in high school and junior high and elementary school, and I know your dad and I travel a lot too. Like one of my biggest regrets is like I always told myself because for my son from 0 to 11, I never missed a sporting event. And when my career took off a little bit, missing those things for me were like just heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Because I promised myself I'm not gonna. Because in my brain, my dad was never a big talker or emotional dude, but he was always there. He showed up. That was really important. When your dad, it's harder for your dad, he traveled so much, but when he did show up to things, because I can tell you on lower levels, I've had things that were about me and somebody maybe more important or more famous showed up, and then it was no longer about me.
Oh, I like that.
Like, when your dad would show up, would he try to stand in the background at your stuff? Like, because that's a real delicate balance, because I'm sure he doesn't want to take away from what you're doing.
Well, work, because when they gave me my dad, so because like as a kid, no, like it was. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Like it's not L.A. Like
Right.
everyone knew us.
So it was no big
like,
deal.
It was no big deal.
Right.
Like I'm telling you, I didn't realize how popular my dad was in the wrestling world or whatever until I got to college, and I was like, oh man, I could have been using this.
Yeah.
Like I am cool kid on campus. Oh my god.
I'm never gonna pay for a beer
Ever?
You mean for actually ever?
Oh, you mean ever? Yeah,
Rock on Flair.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, but the only thing I can say is so when I got to the main roster, they gave me my dad, and what I think was like for my dad to give me the rub is what we call it in our business, like to give me that elevation or to help me get over. But how I took it was like I have to be on screen with Ric Flair. Like I'm either gonna sink or swim. Like I don't see how that is going to make me better or have the fans like me, because they were like,
That's
oh
that
well,
old school Vince way
it's
of
the
thinking, though.
father-daughter thing. People can relate to that. And I'm like, no one can relate to a daughter having Ric Flair as their father. Like, I would drink at the bar and smoke cigarettes with him. Like we did that in London one. Like that's not normal.
Right.
Like that's how I like.
So you're saying
I
it
was
would
like,
be hard for you to be tried by a jury of your peers,
Yeah, like,
basically.
yes.
It's
Right,
Like,
so
that's not-
because it's a lose-lose almost. Because if he does all the talking,
Yeah. No, because that's just my dad. Like when
Right.
the lights are not even. He is Ric Flair. So I go, okay,
yeah.
well
No,
I've
he
got
is.
to I've got to make the audience and everyone behind that what do you call it, hard cam, the millions behind hard cam on Monday Night Raw, they have to be looking at me. And I can't say, hey dad, stop wooing or stop, because he'd be in his like own little world.
Right.
Like no, so that was knowing that I wanted to make it. So I just said I have to be that much better every single Monday. And I just dedicated the last 3 years to like, I'm gonna outshine my dad.
how do you practice being that person? Right. So you in order to be that person, you can't just only do it in the ring, right? Do you only do it in the ring? How did
Have
coming
you
up,
tried
did you
living the
practice
gimmick?
it? Did you ever live it a little bit?
Some
No,
some
like, I'm
people
not,
do.
like,
I
no,
know
like-
some guys and girls who try to live the gimmick so that they can own it more. Have you ever tried that or no? Because that's like
I mean, I
almost
wish like
method
as
work.
like I wish I could say like I'm that super confident person or I'm
Well, you already
I
said
feel
you're not.
100% like I'm not, but like my dad is Ric Flair. Like he'll like I don't feel like my character would be like just casual every day, just like just
She wouldn't be just happy to be there.
no.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think so. But
She has to be
I
royalty.
do like
now.
I think
Legacy.
I know where I want to go with the company and I know my
Where do you want to
Ta-
go?
Yeah.
What's the goal?
oh well I
Well,
want to
you
main
said- you
event
said it out loud,
WrestleMania
yeah. Oh, yeah,
and I
that's
want to
awesome.
be the guy.
So let me
The
ask
face.
you
Like
this.
the face.
Let
Like
me-
I know as a female, like people would say, "Oh, you are the face." Like no, like I want to be, like
John Cena, The Rock,
the
face.
John Cena,
I know
The
what you
Rock.
mean.
I want to be. I like.
Let me
I'm
ask
like
you this.
Roman. I want to take your seat. Like you've main evented Mania 3 years in a row.
Is there a match, if you could book it, that you
No,
feel
I
would be?
can't.
You can't? Can I book one? I can speculate, right?
Okay.
So, I loved what you and Asuka did, and I love the story that was told. And to understand the story is to own the WWE network and watch this sort of steamroll career of this Japanese wrestler that everyone thought was Hunter's favorite child go undefeated and just, I mean, squash match a couple times, which doesn't really happen that often in the wrestling business anymore, and it did with
And
her.
for women.
I had never seen it in a women's match, and it was happening. And then she makes her debut, and you win a match that a lot of people on social media
I know it was funny because I was the underdog.
didn't see going that way.
I know, and I like, and me going like, well, I've won everything. Why wouldn't I? Like, why am I the underdog?
For real.
Like I was like,
Now, I worked at the company,
Yeah.
so for me, I'm like, I know who's winning this match because they built the story up for that, and
Yeah.
then I see what's now in turn has happened for Carmella.
But like once again though, like saying that, even though I like you could say, well, I've done this, I've done that, they still viewed me as the underdog, showing that like just because I'm a legacy kid, Asuka's just viewed in a different light. Like I'm
Look,
bigger than Asuka. Like
I'm
not
a
saying-
junior, so I get where
Yeah,
you're
you
coming
get what
from.
I'm
You're
saying.
sitting there going underdog.
Yeah.
Like
it was
I
weird.
was legit born to do this.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
didn't know it. And the moment I knew I was born to do this, look how good I got and look how fast I got there.
Yeah.
What would you consider to be your? I'm always curious about this, because sometimes what you consider your strengths and weaknesses, other people would be like, well, I thought actually what you considered your weakness was your strength. What would you consider as far as the whole package? What you do, your profession. What are your strengths, and what would you were like? I still could use some work on this stuff.
Weaknesses, probably.
By the way, it tells me a lot that you went
Weaknesses first.
Tells me a lot about you.
Oh.
That you went weak. Don't you think so?
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Shows humility.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I tend to overthink everything, but I also think that's also a strength. Like, just like like I could go into the whole I turned good guy and what it was gonna take to keep me as the good guy and completely changing my moveset. But I just overthink everything to where I think if I just knew, like 100,
Do you
And
have problems
that-
with? You mean spontaneity is not like or rolling with it, or give me an example like when you mean you overthink things, how that is? It could be in the ring with what you do.
Hold on, let me. Weakness.
Are you
Hold
talking?
on.
Would you say you're better in the ring or on the mic?
Weakness. So,
She would say in the ring.
Yeah?
She kind of already did.
Yeah.
like a weakness would have been so I when I was bad, it was easy just to go to like the arrogant, the go-to.
Right.
Go-tos, yeah, all
Yeah,
actors have.
like it's just an easy go-to.
Got it.
So
Mine was indicating to make
showing
it
the
sound more
world
important.
that like I'm goofy and like super like frazzled or like whatever, and that's what it was gonna take to help people in when they turned me a good guy. Because like the only reason I was turned into a good guy was because the audience now was cheering me. But in my mind, I go, they're not cheering me because they love me. They're cheering me because they respect me, and that's only gonna last so long if you're being pushed. So like I needed to
Because the
find a
audience
reason
knows
to
who's
love
getting
me.
pushed.
Like if I'm the good, like so even when I faced Asuka, I didn't want to get booed because it was technically two good guys. But like I needed to let the audience in and realize that this like regal character, like you can be, like I think when they paired me with my real life best friend on TV who is super quirky and her character is quirky, Becky Lynch, like that actually helped the fans in instead of only seeing me
Well,
like
and they
one
also
way.
saw little
that's really
secret things
interesting.
that you
Yeah.
guys had in your tea.
Like the
and-
tea,
yeah,
like they're
those
like,
types
oh,
of
this
things.
is like.
It's like when you see
oh,
two
she's
baseball
with-"
guys do their secret handshake,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you see younger kids do it. I would see you guys would even repost, like kids,
The
fans
kids doing the
that would
tea.
start doing it, and
Yeah.
little things like
That's
that.
the
man.
connecting thing you're talking about, though, because
Yeah.
that's a little bit of human you're letting people in on.
So they hated me, so they connected with me. But what do they like? How if someone says they're genetically superior, they've won everything, they've done all the titles, they respect you, but what makes them love you and continually to be that baby face that they want to see win, even though they've always won? So it's like I opened up like anytime on social, I just open up like my little brother is why I want to be like just doing those things to make myself more vulnerable on TV. So bringing more me to the screen. And it's like, well, will they like me, or that's not with my character? So it's constantly analyzing what's too far or what like my character wouldn't do. And then I learned like they did fall in love with me for being arrogant, so show that side.
And that's the
Does
weird,
that-
Yeah,
and
it
that's
does.
the weird bridge that wrestling walks, because there is a scripted part of it, but because it's sort of a reality show,
Yeah.
the best ones are bringing a lot of who they are to these characters, even if it's not their name. There's not really a guy named
Like
Dolph
Stone
Ziggler.
Cold drinking
Yeah.
beer. Like everyone in the audience could be like, yeah, I wear jean shorts and a cutoff t-shirt.
And they
I
all
drink
wanted
beer.
to punch their
But,
boss. They
like,
can relate to that.
Yeah, like who in the audience is sitting there going like, oh, I wear these glamorous robes
And I'm
I say
genetically
I'm the
superior
best."
too.
Like
Yeah.
it's hard. So how do I like?
No, you got to open
Connect.
doors.
Yeah,
How do you
But
connect?
social
Yeah.
media has really empowered
that's what's helped
the
me.
professional
Yeah.
wrestler to sort of allow people in when the writing isn't able to, or the writing isn't allowed to, depending on what day of the week it is. So social media has really opened that window, and it allows you guys to be, even though it's a character, like the Charlotte Flair character, you didn't walk in
I'm
here
never
with a
gonna be a
giant
white
robe.
meat baby face, but it's
No.
like they at the same time, like I've worked with a lot of the writers, and they keep like they still want the edge. So I can't lose the edge, but at least give them enough and work on that.
You know, Freddie and I actually, we
Oh,
had our
no.
own
What?
wrestling characters.
You would call yours a character?
Well, my guy kind of disappeared a little bit.
Because he ran in fear. He
Yeah.
thought he could out promo me. So we had a promo competition on Instagram. We both created wrestlers.
I feel like I was maybe winning, and then I just bailed.
You
But
bailed.
I bailed hard.
I went full 80s.
He did.
and that's-
Alexander Slamilton, he
That
had
was
a
my
powdered
character.
wig, and he had the flute music coming on, boop, 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 and he would come on.
My finisher was the $5 thrill.
Yeah. And I was the producer.
You were the producer. He was
So I
like
was
a Hollywood scumbag.
Yeah, and all my promos started in with fade in, and they all ended up with fade to black.
And he sounded like Matthew McConaughey,
yeah,
which is pretty cool.
He did, and I had a purple velvet jacket with no shirt on underneath.
And he had the muscles popping. But you couldn't hang on the promo department. You should have let me write the
I know. I just
producer's
started running out
promos.
of things to say. But do you write your own promos?
No.
Okay. And when you get a promo, do you?
Oh, I analyze everything.
You do.
Oh yeah.
And do
It's
you
good to
want to
challenge
get
your
to a
writers, though.
point
Makes
where
them
you
better.
want to write your own promos? And do you get
No,
to pick
because
who writes your promos?
like another weakness is I get too close and too attached to certain things. Like so, my last promo before I left, I was standing in the ring with my best friend, and I'm like, "Well, I've won this, and I've won that, and I won this, and I'm gonna take home that briefcase." And she's like standing right there, and I'm like, "You guys, like." Of course I'm gonna get booed and she's gonna get cheered if I'm still trying to be the bad guy and I'm just sitting here talking about myself and Becky's like, hello. Like,
I'd like to have something to say, please.
yes, like I feel bad.
Can I interject? Because I can maybe get it too.
Did you need me to speak or say anything at all? Because I'm
And
like,
that's how she like got into the conversation. And I'm like, I look like an asshole.
I love
And
that.
they're like,
That's
no, you're just too like. That's how we see you. Like you're gonna like when you're naming off your like be proud like, but so I can't write because I go well, that makes me too conceited. So I get too close to it looking at the character.
Like when an actor doesn't want to do a certain thing because they're
Yeah.
embarrassed, and the director has to go to them and go, "Hey man, that's your character, not you. It's okay if you lose the fight.
Yeah.
It's not really you losing the fight."
You're not really
But it's hard.
Spider-Man.
Like as a young actor, man, there were times where, and I know you did last summer. There's a scene with Ryan and I,
Is that
and
the shirtless scene?
I don't remember if we're shirtless in that one.
I think there was at least one shirtless scene. Let's ask the expert. Was it
Oh
shirtless?
God! But there, I was 20. I was like maybe 21 years
Whip
old.
out your phone. I know you have all the pictures from
You
there.
better not, bro. By the way, that weird sound on my phone
Yeah.
was Sarah's text, and it was right the first time when you busted her on that. So you know her ears were like, "What? What the?"
Yeah, no, we both.
Oh no, what's really weird too is like I had a Buffy t-shirt on.
Did you
That's
really?
what I watched growing up, and I think you like liked it or
That's
Or-
money if you did.
no, who
Do you ever wear your Buffy shirt while you're watching She's All That?
no, I don't do that.
You thought about it though for like
Yeah,
a
that took-
second.
by the way,
No, I
that took
did.
a little
I
long for you to
separate
answer
you
that,
two.
by
I
the way.
separate you
Appreciate
two.
that.
He took about
No.
10 seconds to answer that.
She
You're like,
kicks
should
more
I admit
ass than I
that?
do.
Or,
You
yeah.
could like her more.
I
I don't remember what I was going to ask you, big old jerk.
I have a couple of other questions about.
Go ahead.
Like, so you're still young as a wrestler. I'm not as in tune, or I don't have as much knowledge, obviously, as Freddie or you about wrestling. Do they allow? Because you grow, people get older. It didn't seem like your dad's character ever changed. Do they allow you to grow and change a little bit as you grow and change, or is the deal with the WWE and what makes it so great is that people know who you are and that's what you do?
I feel like if you don't grow and change, you don't make it. So like how I debuted is not the same character or the same
Not even close.
Not even close. So if I didn't grow and change,
Yep.
I wouldn't be where I am today. So you have to evolve. And every character, even though like my dad, he even evolved. Like I know he was still Ric Flair, but there are little
He had his
things.
bits, but he absolutely did.
Yeah, and it's storylines and it's work ethic and it is like continuing your, I guess I hate this word, but brand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a real, we use it.
Yeah.
There's a flip side to that coin, though. There are some people who evolve through so many characters that aren't working to try and find that one that does, that at a certain point they sort of lose an identity. So
Yeah.
there's a flip side to it too, like with all things. And I've seen
Like Sandow.
very much so,
He's-
very much so.
So there was a character that
He's not there anymore.
He's not there, but I mean, okay, let me try to think of somebody else.
Well, that's what you
Bo
use.
Dallas
Yeah.
on the B team. Like they're just going out there like he debuted.
And him
as-
at NXT, which was like, I'm bringing
Yeah.
cookies and cupcakes to you, and he was like this motivation guy,
Yep.
to where he is now. And he's even had some in between like mean streak in there
Yep.
that they threw in for a little bit. So he's definitely been somebody who's exploring toward the positive and not the negative.
Yeah.
He's
Can-
finding himself more.
Can both of you think of some? And this.
And his dad was IRS from the 80s, so you know I gotta give him some extra love because I
and
always
it's like
loved the
Bray
bad
Wyatt
guys.
character. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's just trial.
Oh,
and
he was,
error.
what was it, Husky Harris?
Yep.
I think was the original character.
Can both of you think of somebody who, when they started, you were like, this dude's gonna crush it, and then just something just happened where
That's
they
probably
never...
a safer question for me to answer
Okay.
than her.
You
'cause
probably
can't be
aren't
throwing
allowed to
people
answer
in.
that?
I'll throw it the other way. I'll say someone who I was like, what the hell? And now I'm like, oh my God, he's amazing. I watch NXT every
Yeah.
week, and they had a character, and I've told you about this guy, just one name, just Elias. And,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
and I didn't get it. And I would watch NXT every week, and I'm like, I don't see it. And I'm very,
But
When I'm
even
wrong,
I know who that guy is.
when I'm wrong, I'll say
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And Hunter saw something in him where I was like, man, what are you even seeing in this guy? And it was like, this was Hunter's plan, and he brought him up. And the moment it was the big stage, I mean, from the very first time, I literally was like, I'm the stupidest guy in the world. Like, he just, everything that I hated about him
Yeah.
was suddenly everything I loved.
But it
and
just
it happened
goes
overnight.
to show you want to peak on the main roster and not
not on
NXT. That I think is like just because you've had the title in NXT doesn't mean you're going, or because you're popular doesn't mean you're going to make it on the main roster,
Well,
because
there's-
it's a whole different audience.
What's the difference in the audience?
Because you have a cult following versus these huge arenas, and if you don't adapt, you don't make it. They don't want to see just moves.
NXT, and
Like-
this isn't a knock on it, but think of it, because you play college baseball, think of it as like AAA baseball, right? And
Yeah.
there are some baseball players that are 4A, right? The ones that have gone up a few times but aren't going to last. So you don't want to show your best in NXT. There's a wrestler I love on the NXT roster now, and we spent like 10 minutes talking about him. They call him the Velveteen Dream. And his level of commitment to this character,
Yeah.
from the kid that walked in the door, who was just this clean-shaven, beautifully, perfectly sculpted young man who just wanted to wrestle, to this, I mean, you talk about arrogant. I mean, he just embraces it so much. And my one concern is if he owns it and figures it out all the way before they pull him up, then I worry where it can go from there. And I like this kid so much. You heard me talk about this kid. You think I got a boy crush on him if you listen to the podcast. But I don't want to see him peak too soon. I want to see him, and they didn't. He took a loss in his last big match, which I think was actually smart, instead of letting him win and making all the fans think, oh, he's the next one. But I don't want him. It sounds weird to say I don't want him to develop too fast, but I don't want him to develop too fast.
Yeah, but sometimes it's the opposite. Like, you're like, oh, they've peaked in NXT, and then they get to the main roster, and then they just grow.
And
like, I
it's
think
even
all
more,
the
yeah.
girls that I've come up with has kind of been.
No, you guys have
Like
done
that.
something that when I worked there, we joked about never being able to happen. Like, it was just the reality that we lived in. There was no world where there would be more than one women's match on in a Monday Night Raw. Maybe you'd get a match in a backstage segment, but you wouldn't get two matches. Very, very rarely.
There were 4 women's matches at WrestleMania last year. 4.
And you guys used to be the pre-match
yeah.
that wouldn't
4
even be
got
on
cut.
TV, or time would get
four
cut.
out of how many?
Main card was 8.
8, yeah.
So the battle royal for the women.
Which was
or
so sick.
Was that on the show or was that pre-show? No,
What,
that was
the battle
pre-show.
royal?
Then me versus Asuka. Then the Ronda, Kurt Angle, Stephanie Hunter.
Oh, yeah, the mixed tag.
And then Lexi versus Nia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you've referenced a couple times, like the difference between wrestling NXT and then going to the big stage, and that people have to adjust. How do they have to adjust?
Because they have to connect. Like on NXT, you're given so much more freedom and maybe more mic time, where our mic time on the main roster is, I mean, when you get that opportunity to shine, you have to shine.
And
or you
you
won't
cannot
get it.
there's
make a
room to
mistake.
make errors
So
in
there-
NXT.
You
There's-
can
yeah,
learn
yeah,
and develop.
There's room to make errors.
Got it.
But on the main roster, it's just so much more vast, and there's so much more talent, and you yourself, and I know people, like, they can want you to be the it guy or girl, but it doesn't mean you're gonna make it. Like, they can keep pushing, but I think it's up to the individual to make the most of the time they're given on the main roster every segment. And to connect with the fans. They have
Yeah.
to find something that connects with the fans.
And that's every TV show, every movie, every
So
stage.
what they
you've stood
applaud
on.
in NXT doesn't mean they're going to applaud on the main roster.
It's interesting. So sometimes what might have worked for you and might have been your thing, just is not connecting in the bigger.
Well, the main roster is a slower pace. I feel like the audience has to understand, like, because it's kids,
Yeah.
it's families, it's
Yeah.
everyone.
Is
in
NXT
the
not the
family.
same demo?
It
It-
doesn't play that way, and if the WWE intends it to be that, it's not. Like, it's a more hardcore, loyal, older group
The
because they
fans.
know more about it,
Got it.
and it's a
Yes.
local, kind of localized show. Whereas WWE, fathers and mothers remember it as a kid and are bringing 8 and 10-year-old kids. You'll see a couple kids in the Full Sail
And I
crowd.
think NXT is getting there. I'm not saying that it's not, because it does travel all over the
It
world.
does, but that's
and
new. They're new.
It's like, okay, for instance, we have something called the Independents. We could take a wrestler from the Independents, hire them, put them on NXT television, and they will already be known because of how popular they were on the Independents, because it's that same following.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
the hardcore. It's like the dirt sheets that she said, the real hardcore, the ones that'll travel to other towns to see the same match almost. It's that group. Whereas the main show is like, oh, they're in our city. I got tickets. Dad, they're coming in 3 weeks. Dad, they're coming in 2 weeks. Dad, they're coming next week.
Yeah.
And it's just a different vibe because you're not getting it there every week, even though NXT travels now.
I did have a couple people on Twitter ask me questions for you, so I'm gonna just.
How good are they?
They're not. A couple of them weren't wrestling questions. Like, you don't have a whole lot of downtime. We've established. What do you do in your downtime? Is there something where you're like, I can't? Some people who I know who are comics who travel all the time, their downtime, they go fishing. They go somewhere where there are no people. They just get away.
Yeah.
What do you? Is there something you like to do?
Well,
She's like downtown.
Yeah. Sleep. Who does that?
I work for Vince McMahon. What do you think?
I just moved back to Charlotte, where I grew up, to be close to my niece and nephew. So recently, I've been spending a lot of time with my older brother and his family. On
Are
my
you the
days
best
off.
auntie of all time?
I try to be.
What's the fun day? Like when you're like,
Well,
I'm
I
gonna-
just took them
Do
for
you
the
buy them
weekend
stuff
to
that they
the
say
TV.
don't buy them and you do it anyway?
No, so my niece was like, I want this jacket, so I gave her my jacket, and my nephew,
You
he
give
didn't
her
want
the
any of
jacket
my
off your
stuff.
back?
They're just in my closet, so I took them to SmackDown and the live events, and they had so much fun.
It's
and
amazing.
Yeah.
That's
we
the
just did
best. So
that.
you try to get time with your
I'm
family
like,
when you have free
Dave,
time.
you trust me to take your kids.
Keep them safe.
You trust me.
You grew up with me. You sure you want to
You
trust
grew
me?
up with me.
You remember what I was like as a kid?
Remember all the times
Yeah.
you punched me in the face? You don't trust me?
But I didn't even hear from them. I was like, oh, they really wanted a weekend.
Oh,
to
so you got a whole
themselves.
weekend? That's nice. though.
Yeah.
Did you and your brother get along when you were kids?
Yes.
You and
I
you
mean,
guys
we fought, but we got along.
still super. Are you guys? Would you consider yourselves super close?
I mean, well, he passed away, but he's still like he'll always be my best friend. Because
Oh,
like growing up with our lifestyle and how close we were, 'cause we're only like 22 months apart. I
you
just
were
feel like he
running-
was the only person that really understood me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, makes total
No,
sense.
you do
Yeah.
know.
Makes total sense because a lot of times it was probably the two of you.
Yeah.
The two of you. And so and that's pretty amazing. And have you guys been able to keep that kind of relationship? Or do you feel like he knows you in a way that probably nobody else because
Oh,
of
he did,
your
yeah.
shared
Yeah.
experience growing up?
Yeah.
It's funny. I still go to my father's grave multiple times a month, and I still have conversations with him, and he knows more shit about me than and I tell him jokes. I tell him bad stuff that I don't want people to know about. I
Yeah.
tell him good stuff. He knows more about me than anyone, and he's been gone forever. You know what I mean? But I still have those conversations.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. One of the first, well, not one of the first time Freddie and I ever talked was on a podcast that I was doing by myself where I was interviewing people. And you told me this story about going to your dad's grave and yelling at him.
Oh yeah, I was pissed.
Yelling at him.
But anger, when you've had someone taken away from you, there's this feeling of helplessness
Yeah.
and weakness. And this isn't me, but psychiatry and smarter people say that anger is the quickest way to re-empower the ego. So it's a natural response. So there was a time when I felt helpless and weak and scared because I was starting to succeed in this business that my father had done so well at, and I was pissed off and angry when part of it got fucked up.
Yeah.
And I legit went there and yelled at him and was cussing at him, and then 3 weeks later I'm apologizing at a wall.
But
but to you, when that's your
Yeah.
relationship, that shit is real, man.
I got to tell you, man. I have 3 older brothers, and we are all 2 years apart.
How much time do we have left?
Hit that button right there.
What button?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I got 3 older brothers. We fought. When I say fought, I got punched. There wasn't a lot of
Yeah,
fighting
you
on
didn't
my
fight
part.
back.
I was
Yeah.
the youngest of 4 boys, so people farted with my mouth open That was it. Open your mouth. I'm like, I don't want to open my mouth. Open your mouth. Oh, it's the worst. Open your mouth. I don't want to.
You should have had a sister, bro.
But did you and your brother also?
Yes. Yes.
Did you guys get into it?
Yes.
And who is he? A physical dude as well?
So when I graduated high school,
He's older, 22 months.
younger.
Younger.
I went to no, he went to boarding school like for the summer, but was back and forth, and I had like kind of started seeing his friends. So when he like came back that weekend, he like knocked down their family's mailbox.
I'm not even related to you, and I got mad when you said that.
I'm so sorry. Like, how do you like read their mailbox?
Yeah,
What?
their mailbox
No.
has nothing to do with me having sex with your
No.
friend.
WrestleMania 20. Shut up.
I say shut
That
up.
man wasn't the mailbox's fault that I.
Like, what are you doing? Like, now I have to, like, I was already, like,
go
older,
see
so
their
it was, like,
family.
the younger kid anyways.
What a
Like,
weird
your mom's
reaction.
not gonna let me.
Go smash their mailbox.
Like, why are you, like, hooking up with my friends?
Why did you break a
I'm
mailbox?
like, oh, I didn't even hook up. Like, I walked in on you on mine.
What?
Like,
That's good though.
Wait,
That's
what?
a good
no, and
argument.
then WrestleMania 28, when you were working with the company, Reed had, like, a party back in the room, and I just went to bed with the guy I was with. Like, not good, like, whatever, we got in an argument, we went to our room, and the next day my dad's like, how come you spent so much money on room service? Like, I told you not to do that. Like, it was like $6,000 or $5,000 in room service. Reed, the bar was closing.
Just like
Not
the
only
club.
had
Just
ran
like
a
the club.
tab through the week,
was
had
pasta night.
charged like 500 beers, liquor,
Your
whatever,
brother.
and charged it to my room, so I got blamed.
Because he knew that Pops would go easier on you than
Yes, yes, okay. But it's like the opposite. So my dad would never get mad at me, but get mad at him, and then Reed could like do it. Like my mom would be like, well, I don't know. My mom just was like, I'm the bad child.
No,
He's
that's
the
how it
good.
is though. We have a daughter and a son. My daughter Charlotte and my son Rocky. And anything that they do when it's a fight, Charlotte or my wife Sarah gets mad at Charlotte, and I get mad at Rocky. And it's the
That's
sex
weird.
thing. I'm telling you, it's the same sex thing. Because like
It-
with my son, I'm like, oh, whatever, he's fine. But with my daughter, I'm like, baby, are you okay? And she's like, what? Dad, I just tripped. I didn't even say ow. But you know, or if Rocky
Yeah.
pushes her, I'm like, Rocky, what's wrong with you? And she's like,
Yeah.
Dad, I pushed him first. But if it's the other way, Sarah, it'll be like, Charlotte, what's wrong with you? And she's like, what'd I do? Like, it's a weird Oedipus thing that parents can't explain, but we're all guilty
It
of it.
is. My dad said when Reed was learning how to walk, when they weren't looking, I'd go and trip him. Like, obviously, I don't remember
I
this.
love that move.
But like,
I love that.
I guess I didn't want him to be able
You
to
are the
walk.
heel.
In that scenario.
In that scenario, my cousin, who was like my older sister, did the same vibes when I would go and visit and be, Freddie, come look at my new bath toys. I'd just be like 7 years old, and she was 9 years old. She was 2 years older than me. Oh, okay, but look. And as soon as I look in, boom, push me right in the bathtub. And I would bust up my face, and she thought it was the funniest thing. She was the heel in our relationship.
Yeah.
And I was always the baby face.
You were?
Always.
I was always the baby face.
I
in my
punched her
family.
once, but
My
she had it
mom
coming.
believed everything I said, which was her first mistake. But one of my favorite, and we have this on video, where we can hear my daughter and my son playing in the room, and then my son just goes quiet, and I'm like, what is going on? There's no way he's quiet. So I walk into the room, and I'm like, I look around, no son, just my daughter watching TV, and I'm like, where'd you put Jacob?
Where did you put him?
And I hear this muffled voice from the closet. I'm in here. And I go let your brother out of the closet. She goes, he wouldn't stop talking. I'm like, that's not the solution. No. She had him in a laundry basket, under some covers in the closet, and told him, if you walk out of this fucking closet, it's gonna be way worse for you than being in there, in the laundry basket, under the covers. So he just wanted
You just stayed there.
It's that fear. It's that older sibling
my
fear.
God.
Even when you're bigger than him, you're still afraid. You still feel like the little dog.
100%. I always am the little brother.
All right, we're gonna let you get out of here because you're melting as well as all of us. But I want to finish on this. We always do a Mount Rushmore, and we always surprise everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, he always surprises me. So I want to throw a weird one down.
Okay.
It's just going to be one match. One match. And it's nothing that's going to get you in trouble. You can pick any 2 actors and you can put them in WrestleMania to main event one that you're not main eventing. Okay? So you were injured, right? So you're going to let them fill in. Any 2 actors in the world. Can be 2 females, could be 2 males.
I got it already.
TV, could be rock stars.
Got it already.
You got it already?
Already.
All right, well then you can go first.
Russell Brand and Ving Rhames. I just want to hear him say, I'm pretty fucking far from okay.
The British stand-up comedian?
And Russell Brand is so bananas. And he'd have like, I want him to have one of those bandit masks on. And his clothes would be
Like the
super
Lone
loose.
Ranger?
Yeah, like the Lone Ranger. And he would just run around him.
Bing Rhames would kill Russell Brand.
Without a doubt.
He would, it's a squash match.
But it would be one of those things where like Russell Brand would hit him like 1,000 times.
It'd be about a 40-second match,
Yeah,
bro.
dude. But I just want to hear him say, I just want his
Pretty
finishing
fucking
move.
far
Yeah.
from okay.
Is he gonna be okay?
Do you remember
He's
Pulp
pretty
Fiction?
fucking far.
Yes.
You remember the big black dude in Pulp Fiction? That's Bing Rhames.
He also does the Arby's commercial. We've got the meats. By the way, I hate that commercial. I don't like meat with an S. I don't know why, but it just should be meat. Don't ever say
Sounds
meats.
weird.
I don't like meats. There's no such thing as meats. It's like shrimps.
Okay, do you want to do one or do you want more time?
I need
'Cause
more
sprang.
time. This is.
All right, I'm gonna do one, and I'm gonna pick one based on like, I kind of like beefs, like old rap beefs and
What'd I
stuff
say
like
about the
that.
S?
Oh yeah, you don't like S's on there, but
Beef-
beefs like
yeah,
rap
beefs,
beefs
okay,
like
yeah, yeah.
LL and Kumo
Not
D
beefs,
and
yeah,
all
yeah.
those, you know what I mean. So I want to do like 2 young actors, or musicians maybe that hate each other. So my match, and sorry, this is a women's match, so you don't get the main event. I apologize. It would be Katy Perry versus Taylor Swift in a steel cage.
They don't like
I
each
got my
other?
money on
Oh no, they used to be friends, like you and Becky, and then one turned on the other, and they
Why?
became mortal enemies. I can't get
I'm
into
so
it, girl.
interested.
It's too deep. They even cut songs on each other. That Taylor single was about Katy, the one where she's dissing the girl.
Got my money on Katy Perry.
She looks scrappy, right?
She grew up in a really, really strict religious household. She's got some inner
So
aggression.
you think
that
she'd
she
take a
is-
beating early on, but then just explode and hulk
she's gonna
up
bring
and
out
then
the
just crush
ruler,
everybody?
just start whipping the
Wait, why is
shit.
it a ruler?
You know, in Catholic school, they hit you with a ruler.
That's what she brought to the ring?
Yeah, a ruler.
It's a foreign object.
And Taylor
with a
Swift just
ruler.
brought her diary.
It doesn't
Oh
hurt
my
though.
God.
When you're a grown up, it's just a ruler.
Well, we'll see. And then Taylor Swift is gonna beat people
They
with a
use
diary.
kendo sticks. So you see how ridiculous this is.
Yes.
So my match would be those 2 lovelies going at it in a steel cage.
Russell Brand talking about his bookie wookie.
Should have
It's
done a
gonna be
first
great.
blood match. Could you imagine that? First one to draw blood on the other. That'd be a great match.
Now, you're deep in thought on this.
I know. Cause I don't.
Is it
there
now-
any?
Well, what about that dude from She's All That? I understand he might have. Do you want to put him in the ring?
No.
What about
Me
the guy
versus
from
you.
She's All That versus the guy from I Know What You Did Last Summer?
Well, that's me.
Oh,
Oh, which me?
you versus
There's
you.
2 me's.
Yes, Summer
managed
League,
by
you.
me.
It's like the Bo Jackson commercial.
It's a great idea. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to see me in no
What?
wrestling ring.
Who? Give me some like.
It's
do you-
gotta be 2 girls.
No, it could be
Two
anybody you
guys.
want.
You could do Chandler versus Ross. Well, I got money on Chandler versus Ross.
Yeah, if it was like the year
If you did
2000.
Chandler versus Ross, who would you pick? Who would you pick?
From Friends?
Who do you think wins in that?
Ross.
Chandler versus Ross. You think Chandler
Ross is crazy.
I'll do Ragnar
What?
versus Fitzgerald from Scandal.
What? From Scandal?
Shit, they're going
Yo.
I'll
deep.
do Ragnar from Vikings versus Fitzgerald,
Those would be some
the
sick
president
promos.
from Scandal.
Those would be some sick promos
Two
because
total opposite.
one promo would be very direct
Yeah.
and calm, and the other one would be like, Ragathor, I welcome your sacrifice. He goes crazy on that show.
And the whole reason I picked Russell Brand is for his mic work. Because I think before the match,
He would be sick on the
He's
mic.
gonna
You got
hype
me
that
on
shit up. Now might get knocked out in 15 seconds,
Yeah.
but he is so
Bing
smart.
Rhames is swole, dude. In real
Yeah,
life.
but and his. Go ahead. If we did
Oh,
mic
I
work-
changed my.
What?
Cardi B
Whoa.
versus.
Oh.
Is it pregnant
No, yeah, I
Cardi B?
changed it.
It's
It
not
doesn't.
right.
Okay.
Cardi B any day. of
Okay,
the
got
week.
it, got it.
Cardi B versus.
Nikki?
Nikki.
Not Minaj. You can't go
No,
after the
I was
champ.
gonna say
Who?
oh, Samantha from Sex and the City.
Oh.
There we
Kim
go.
Cattrall?
Kim Cattrall.
Yeah.
Kim Cattrall ain't doing the job. She's going over big in that match. She ain't losing that match.
Kim Cattrall. Well, look, if you're talking about especially a younger Kim Cattrall.
Kim
like,
Cattrall is not losing that
Did
match.
you ever see Porky's? You ever see
Yeah, I saw
You ever
Porky's.
see
I also saw Mannequin.
You saw Porky's Kim Cattrall?
In Mannequin, she had Egyptian goddess powers.
I'm saying.
Kim Cattrall is not losing to Who do you have going over in that match? And what kind of match?
Oh, I know, that's why. Because I've been watching Sex and the City, the reruns.
Yeah.
I'm like-
My wife's obsessed. She even did an episode. She was obsessed with that show.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think what episode that was.
It was like season friggin' 20.
Which one?
What-
I don't know. How many years was that show
Oh,
on? It was the
that
second to
Sarah was
last
on?
season that she was on.
Yeah, she's just so, that character was so out there. And then Cardi
And that
B
character
is
was
so,
the most confident
Yes.
human on earth. Like she, even when she got sick, the character got sick, and she had that
Oh,
one
yeah.
vulnerable
when she had
moment.
cancer and she
Yeah.
threw off the wig. And was
But
like,
even then,
yeah.
it's like at the end of the episode, she was right back to like what Charlotte Flair does when she walks down the ramp.
I like
Is
it.
that your
My
inspiration?
extensions.
Is Samantha your inspiration? Are you gonna start saying, "Darling"? Don't.
What if I told you it's my inspiration? It's actually mine. That's who I think about before I go on
She
stage.
inspires me.
She inspires.
She inspires us all.
I have to say, I've never seen a full episode of that show.
Really? Why are you not a
Never?
girl?
I've seen the movies. I've seen a couple movies because my wife watches them.
I would when I'm in bed with Sarah. If that was on, then that's how I saw it.
Yeah, that,
And I would
that's
make
why I
her-
say full
and I would
episodes.
watch
I've
her-
fallen asleep to about a million of them.
I would watch her make Dragon Ball Z. This was early in our. It's a cartoon from Japan.
Hilarious.
Hey, if she made me suffer through that, she had to suffer too. We both suffered. We both survived 18 years.
But my dad used to watch Sex and the City. I
Yeah,
feel like
but your dad can
it's
watch
not-
whatever he wanted. Didn't that's
well,
cheating.
It's not too.
It's cheating.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. It's not like for me. It wasn't. I would go to sleep to Sex and the City,
Yeah.
but like, and I go to sleep to The Bachelor. Like, I love it when she watches her shows. 'Cause
Well, I
I'm
don't
like,
watch The Bachelor.
I can just go right to sleep. Dancing with the Stars makes no sense to me. Wait a second. You want me to watch people who aren't good at their normal job
But sometimes they get good.
do a job that they're already not? You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
dog. Sometimes they get good. They've had people on there that do. That kid Jordan Farmer from Hamilton. My daughter went to an episode. Now, granted, he's a trained
Yeah,
Broadway
dude.
dancer.
Some of the dancers they
Yeah.
have
But
on
he
are
did his thing.
athletes.
And shout out to Nikki Belly. She was super nice to my daughter. She got my wife
She
and her
did
tickets.
well.
She did do well, and she got him backstage.
Stacey Keebler did really well.
Back in the day, that's
Yeah.
right. What other wrestlers have done it? Has a guy wrestler ever done it?
Guy athlete, a guy
Athletes
football
do
players.
it.
Guy
Yeah, football
do
players
it.
have. I wonder if a pro wrestler ever has.
I don't think so. We should get your dad to do
get
it.
Big Show's big ass out there.
Listen, Big Show would be funny.
He would
Is
be
your dad
funny.
not a great dancer?
He's a great
No,
strutter.
Yeah, I like watching him in the Offset video. Just like oh my god.
The shame. No one's ever seen shame
He's like
connected to
threading the
replacement.
needle, and I'm like, stop moving your hips. It's gross. Like, calls it threading the needle. It's
Oh.
disgusting.
Let me tell you, I
That's
do
a
things
sexy dance.
because my kids are older. I do things to disgust them.
No, it's-
My daughter already gives me these looks when I try to be cool. She literally goes, "No, Dad, no."
If I ever post a picture on Instagram with my shirt off, I know I'm gonna get a text from my daughter like 8
As
seconds
you
later.
should.
Put that picture away.
You're
Don't
a
ever.
56-year-old man. You don't need to be.
I'm
taking
72.
that shit up.
So at this point, I'm back on to being able to take my shirt off.
Should we say thank you to the awesome Charlotte
I
Flair
could talk
and
to you
apologize
forever.
for making you sweat? and
Yes.
die
I'm
in the
good.
sweat
Thank
lodge?
you for
Are
having
you
me.
hallucinating? Are you having Native American visions yet? What's
No.
your spirit animal?
Oh.
And that's only if you hallucinate.
These are tough
from the heat.
questions.
Yeah, don't ask me. Don't ask me.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
a peacock. There you go.
That's perfect.
All right. I'm Josh Wolf. That's the guy from She's All That. And this is Charlotte Flair.
So
And
embarrassing.
this has been Prinze and the Wolf, everybody. Let it ride.
Thank you. You're the best.
No, thank you.
That was
Oh.
amazing.
There's air conditioning in this room.